but you still don't have a tight ends coach. And you
Part of
got to
that's
have one of
because
those.
Heupel has been busy with bowl prep, transfer portal, and this huge recruiting weekend that we were talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of taking precedence over all this other. And he looked all the options that were there when we first, like, we've known since Golish left that this was probably going to be the path that was taken. And it turns out Joey Hosley was named offensive coordinator back in mid-December, but we kind of knew, hey, he's probably going to be promoted. Then Heupel's going to go need to get a tight ends coach. And we started talking about names, early on in this process over a month ago. All those names are still there, still available. So Heupel hasn't hurt himself by waiting on this.
Yeah, I think the ones that had been tossed around were the guy from North Texas, Luttrell,
Yeah.
who kind of ties back to Heupel, and then was it a guy at UCLA?
Yeah. So
Right.
Jeff Ferris, and
Ferris.
he's a Knoxville native
Right.
who
Yeah.
played for Dave Cutcliffe at Duke, was an assistant at Duke under Cutcliffe for many years, and then Cutcliffe retired, and he immediately went to UCLA with Chip Kelly. So I don't know, if it's him wanting to get back to the East Coast and kind of his hometown. I don't know the personal situation or how much there is to that, because really it's been mostly speculation. I mean, there's been names tossed out there. I know some various reporters have kind of tossed names out there and said that they've heard various things, but I still wouldn't be surprised if just something out of left field came up and Heupel hired somebody, from the NFL. I threw out today that maybe if Brandon Staley, who I completely forgot was a former Tennessee assistant, if he gets fired by the Chargers, he's also got a bunch of former Tennessee assistants on his staff, one of them being his tight ends coach, who is fairly young, was a GA at Tennessee in 2015, went to Eastern Kentucky where he was under Mark Elder, Tennessee's former tight ends coach under Butch Jones. Then he went to Iowa, so he's only had like 2 years of NFL experience. If you get fired, your staff's going to get fired. Maybe he has to go back to college and get a job. If he, hey, that could be a guy that you could use on the recruiting trail because he's been around the country at various schools. He's been in the NFL, and that always plays well on the trail because, those, like you said, those guys want to get to the NFL, and he can be like, hey, I've been there. I know what you need to do to get there. So I'm not saying that he's going to be the guy by any means, but it wouldn't be a shock if something like that ended up being the hire.
I certainly look at a guy now. I'm looking at him. Is it Kevin Coger?
Yeah.
Is the tight ends coach with the Chargers, and I think I saw Staley got the dreaded vote of confidence from after they blew that game sky high last night.
Mm-hmm.
He got the vote of confidence from the front office, so he may not be getting fired, but
we'll see how that plays out. Though that that happens from time to time, and there seems to be I don't know that situation that well. I know he's had winning seasons both of his first 2 years there, but even if they do keep him, they might force him to make some staff changes. He's also got his running backs coach is a former Tennessee assistant, and there's been some talk like, hey, maybe Heupel goes and gets a running backs coach that he likes to Titans. Jerry's coach tight ends before, like that's an option as well. I don't think that's what'll happen, because I don't think he wants to move Jerry Matt from where he's been, because we know how important continuity is. But with that running backs coach, it's Derek Foster, I think is his name. Do you have it pulled up there by chance? He kind of has some roots though in the same system as Josh Heupel. He coached at Samford, which is coached by a guy that played quarterback at Valdosta State for Mike Leach and Hal Mumme, and went to Kentucky. And so that guy has his roots in the air raid system, and he worked under him. I know Heupel doesn't run the air raid, but Heupel's roots are also in the Mike Leach system. So there's some crossover there that could make sense. You got to think about that too, because I don't think Heupel's going to go get a guy from like Iowa State that's in this kind of old school offense or whatever or Iowa that's in this old school offense that's completely different from what he runs. He's going to get somebody that has experience with tempo, that kind of has experience with spreading the field out and running this type of offense.
It is Derek Foster. They don't on the Chargers official website. They have where he went to college in his hometown, and that's
he was a GA in 2012. So it was him.
Okay.
Him and Brandon Staley, the Chargers head coach, were GAs at Tennessee in 2012, and then Derek Ansley, who later came back as Tennessee's
Yeah.
defensive coordinator under Pruitt. He was the safeties coach, I believe, in 2012 under Pruitt, and he's now the cornerbacks coach or safeties coach, one with the Chargers.
I mean, those two specifically, in terms of kind of in my mind, the type of dude that would fill that role, both of those dudes are right there. The guy from North Texas, even, I'm not totally sure. I think we talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago. His history doesn't lie in SEC ball, and I'm always leery of that because it's all about recruiting. Like, it's a tight ends coach. Like, Heupel's going to take care of you, even if you're a lame tight ends coach. His offense is just so good. Like, it's in terms of this system, you don't have to be an amazing tight ends coach to make it work in this system, but you do have to be an amazing recruiter to make it work in this system.
Well, then what about Mr.
And
Jones' suggestion here, Todd Downing? How would you feel about that, since he has these ties to the state of Tennessee?
dang it, Mr. Jones. Yeah, hard pass on Todd there. But in terms of what I'm thinking, like this, the tight ends coach there, Codger, he doesn't have an SEC background, but he played at Michigan, and so he knows big time college football. And
We had 1 year at
specifically,
sea.
that's true. That is true. So he does know that much, and would probably know Knoxville a little bit, which is good. But in terms of somebody who's going to be young and hungry on the recruiting trail, because it's just such a specific skill set in a way, you have to be that dude who will show, like, think about the function that they serve. A lot of those guys, you have to go to a kid's high school and just show up, track them down, talk to them, create a relationship,
And not be awkward.
not be weird, not be weird. I mean,
put them at ease.
Yeah, there has to be a bit of salesman
And
there.
you have to stand out among all the other coaches that are coming to see them.
It's
can't
a
be the same
really
spill.
odd thing. And so, I don't know if this is Heupel's criteria. I'm sure it's part of the criteria, I would think. I think he probably is looking for a guy who can be a good tight ends coach, but and not just a recruiter. But that's just such a big part of it, and it's a weird thing. And like, guys from the NFL, you always wonder, like, are they in the NFL because they don't want to do any of that? That is a factor a decent amount of the time, where just the recruiting thing is just too much. They don't like it. They don't want to go to a high school, talk to a high school kid, and that's part of their job. And I cannot blame you at all. That's the way that college football goes. So I'm very fascinated to see who ends up in this position. The options are interesting. These are some interesting names that you brought up, Zach, and some cool connections with these guys. Who knows exactly where they go? I haven't seen anywhere where anybody has a real feel for this almost at all.
Well, I think it's because Heupel hasn't really put much effort, or not. I don't want to say put much effort. He just hasn't put his attention on making this hire yet, because he's had other stuff that's a little more important. This isn't as time sensitive. And there's also the chance that he promotes from within, which I know is not a popular answer, but he did it with Kelsey Pope, and that worked out pretty well. I mean, Jalen Hyatt had a tremendous season, and Kelsey Pope, from the people I've heard, you've seen the comments from recruits, but I've also heard that he has a reputation in that facility as a tenacious recruiter, a guy that is really gets after it. He's well liked. He connects well. Everything that you were saying there, basically, that you have to do, he had those qualities, and you got to think that was a big part of why Heupel promoted him, not just because he thought he could teach tight ends, and not just because, or wide receivers, and not just because of the continuity, but because he believed he could recruit. And so far, we've seen that he can.
Definitely.
I know Jason Witten's name has been brought up a ton. And Mr. Jones, I think we both try to put it up at the same time. So his name's been brought up a ton for this, because he's a high school coach down in Texas. He almost became the high school coach at Lipscomb Academy last month to replace Trent Dilfer, who went to UAB. And as from what I understand, that deal was really close to happening. It was talked about, behind the scenes for several weeks, and was very close to happening. I think there were some people that even, a day or two before it kind of broke that he wasn't going to be the head coach, felt like that was really going to happen. from what I understand or can gather, it seems like he doesn't want necessarily to move his family from Texas at this time. I don't know if he would reconsider that for a spot on Tennessee's staff. And I don't know if that's, I don't know if it's the right move or not. Like that's something that Heupel would have to decide through conversations with Jason Witten. Does he fit with the staff? Is his offensive philosophy the same? Does he buy into what Heupel's doing? Can he sell that? Does he believe in it? Because if you don't, you're not really helping the program a lot. And it's always cool to see former Vols on staff, but I don't think that should kind of like trump another candidate. It's just my opinion. I think you got to go hire the guy that you think does the best job.
Yeah.
If that's a former Tennessee player, then great. That's really cool to see them back. I don't know that that's the life that Witten necessarily wants to lead as far as the recruiting stuff, because family is obviously very important to him. I just don't think that would be a viable option.
Here's where that breaks down for me. I love Jason Witten and would love to see him as a coach or a part of Tennessee's staff. This man has made in his NFL career a contract worth $28 million, a contract worth $37 million, and a contract worth $30 million. His final year in the league, he made $4.25 million. Jason Witten does not have to do anything. If he treated his money correctly, he doesn't have to do anything for the rest of his life. That's probably why he's coaching high school ball. And so I look at that, and in terms of my own criteria, what I want to see there, young, hungry, tenacious. Where would the motivation be for Jason Witten? The man's worth tens of millions of dollars. And it's just, I don't think that it's a great fit. I mean, Mr. Jones does say it here. He can recruit just with his name. That's probably true. But at the same time, it's not that simple. Like it is and it isn't.
There's a lot of non-glamorous work that goes in with recruiting. A lot of texting, a lot of, Twitter DMs, a lot of film that you're breaking down and watching and going through. It's not just going into their schools or going into their homes and visiting, but that is obviously a big part of it. And you're on the road, you're in a hotel, you're on planes, like you're away from your family. Like you said, Witten, I feel like he's coaching high school football in Texas because he enjoys it. I think he loves Tennessee. Obviously, it's a big part of who he is. He's come back to Tennessee. He's been to games. I stood beside him. I remember at the Utah State game before the game, and he was just, he loves the Vols. Like it is very important to him, and I'm sure he would love to have a hand in that. But I just don't think that's the life that he really wants.
Yeah, 100%. That's just, when I hear that, it's exciting. Oh man, that would be incredible. And then when you really think it through, it just doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind. But hey, if that's what he wants to do, I would welcome him back.
Oh yeah,
with open arms.
A great story, and I think he'd do well. But I just don't see it.